That's where entrepreneurs live. You live in the suck. And the reality is, as an entrepreneur, if you're building a business, you don't need to get everything right. You need to get your product right most times. You need to get the people right, and you need to get your values right, and then you just need to give a damn. And I think that's what investors want to invest in. On a personal level, showing passion, showing integrity, showing that you're ethical. But the reality is, if you don't have a great product and you don't have a great team and you're not innovating, no amount of meetings and coffees is probably going to raise you capital. But I think the truth is you got to have an exciting vision and you got to deliver results. You have to produce growth. It's the same thing as a business. You can wish your way at all sorts of things. If your company's not growing and you can't pay the bills, you can't employ people. You can't pay people. You can't grow. You can't invest. And so it's hard. It requires a very difficult judgment between the speed and quality. You want to be customer obsessed. Where does customer obsession collide with launching a product too quickly? I get punched in the stomach constantly. Building a business, I do it because I love it. I mean, we're passionate about what we do. It's fun. But just like training in the gym or playing sports, you're going to get hit, you're going to get knocked down, and you're going to have games or days where you're like, I suck.
Welcome to another episode of the Challenger X podcast. I'm your host, Jerome Dwight, and today's guest is someone whose journey I've had the privilege of witnessing firsthand. I'm thrilled to welcome Rob Kazam, the CEO of Float. I first met Rob in 2019 as he was founding Float, and it's been incredible to watch him disrupt Canada's payment ecosystem, challenging legacy banks and redefining how businesses manage their finances. Float is not only a leader in financial technology, but also a key tool for Boomerang FX, the company I founded with our teams across North America and Australia, relying on it for corporate cards. Let's dive into his story, his bold vision, and how he's reshaping the future of financial services in Canada. Let's get to it. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today, it's my honor to have Rob Kazam, CEO, co-founder of Float. Now this is a company that I'm proud to say we actually use at Boomerang. So I couldn't wait to have Rob come here to talk about his company that's been sort of really shaking things up in Canada. So Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And you've got a great story. You went from the ride-sharing business to Float. So talk to me about the journey. How'd you get to Float?
Yeah, so for background, I grew up in Toronto. I started my career in the finance industry. 2014, I had an opportunity to join Uber. I worked internationally, launching new markets for them, first in Eastern Europe, and then later became the GM for Eastern Europe and Canada. And in 2019, I left. And I think like a lot of people after a ride like that, you sort of, you take a break, but then you're like, what can I do that's going to fulfill me and create purpose? And that sort of adrenaline rush that you get from building something like Uber. And at the time, I was thinking about leaving Canada. And I was thinking, maybe it makes sense to go south of the border. And as this was happening, I was looking at different business opportunities and considering joining a company, starting a company, and I met two young University of Waterloo grads named Griffin Keglovich and Ruslan Nikolaev. And they were trying to build a fintech application, and they had this pain they described to me. They said, hey, we worked as interns at Shopify and at Uber. They were like top of their class, Waterloo, like the best of the best. Certainly not a program I would do well in. And they said, we ran these intern programs and we were paying out of pocket for these expenses and then getting reimbursed. We're students, we don't have a lot of money. They're asking us to shell out $1,200 on our personal cards and then get reimbursed. We thought, what if we use this issuing technology that we've learned about, these APIs, to create an application where someone can just request in Slack, hey, Jerome, I need to spend $1,000 on X, Y, and Z. Do you agree? You click approve, and it issues this single use, what was then called a virtual card. Now more people know. I had never heard of it. And so I said, oh, that's a that's a cool problem. When I was in Eastern Europe, I had an expense report in February of 2015 in Romania. I've been buying thousands of iPhones and getting them in the country because that was part of my job, to distribute them to drivers. I said I had this expense report. It was a total nightmare. And this like immediately resonated with me. This is something I wish I had. I got to know them, and we started to spend time together and hang out in coffee shops and talk to different business owners. And what I found was the business landscape was terribly fragmented. You know, we spoke to businesses, said, what do you use to manage your books? What do you use to manage finance? I said, we've got, you know, this tool for receipts. We've got this tool for approvals. We've got this tool for expense reports. You know, we use these banks, but then our team has to use these spreadsheets to reconcile this. And we thought, this is a mess. You know, how does anyone get anything done? How much more value can these businesses create if they had great software that could automate all of this and empower them to actually spend time on the things that matter? You know, growing products, doing R&D, expanding markets, recruiting, training people. And we came up with this insight of there are sort of 4 to 5 main jobs to be done around business payments. And if you build great digital products that take care of those jobs to be done, you can become a payments company, and you embed these experiences and these workflows into the payment workflow, and you've got a 10x better solution for the customer, and it's a really interesting business opportunity. And then we looked at the StatsCan data and Payments Canada data and saw, you know, it's a $4 trillion a year B2B payment volume. The vast majority of it is still very traditional, like a substantial amount in cash and check. The Canadians' propensity to use electronic methods of payment has actually never been higher. And so we've seen that in the B2C market, like all of the, you know, PayPal and Apple Pay, but B2B has been left, you know, 25 years behind, especially in Canada. And so it was those kind of insights that led me to walk away from that meeting and go, wow, there's a big opportunity here. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so we decided to partner and work together. And that was March of 2021 that I joined them full time.
What a great story. I remember meeting you around that time when you were kind of early in the idea generation, and you were clearly, you know, excited about this very disruptive idea. And I remember that conversation because you were thinking exactly what you just said. The way employees are reimbursed for their expenses has been traditionally very inefficient, leading to tons of expense reports and admin time that, you know, I've spent doing myself when I was a young consultant. And hundreds of thousands of employees, whether they're salespeople, commissionable employees, all have this pain point. And what was interesting to me is, fast forward now as CEO of Boomerang FX, we are a tech company ourselves. Our finance team came knocking on my door saying, we've found a solution for how to streamline expense management and funding our salespeople who are out on the road having to spend money. So I thought it was really an interesting full circle for us to be talking about Float.
Well, we're lucky to have you as a customer.
So you are quite a disruptive force in financial services. Financial services in Canada dominated by a few large banks, and then a few sort of intermediary fintechs are emerging. Now you show up with a very different strategy, helping companies be more organized and maximize their expenses and their capital. How did you think of disruption? Like, did you have apprehension? You're going up against some pretty entrenched forces. How did you get the courage to say, I'm coming at it from a different lens?
Yeah, I mean, my co-founders, fortunately, even when I met them, they had already been working through like a V1 of the product. So when I saw it and I used it, I thought, this is the beginning of something great. And we had customers, prospective customers who said, if you build this, I'll pay for it and I'll use it because I really want it. And I think that customers solve all problems. Like any fear, anxiety you have about a market opportunity, if you just look at spreadsheets and do market studies, you're not going to work up the courage. When you go to customers and you sit in their office and say, here's a product. Does this solve your problem? Like, is this actually a game changer? And people say, not only is it a game changer, but if you build it, I'll use it. And here are 20 other things I'd love for you to build that I'm really frustrated about. You walk out of those meetings and you go, I feel more confident, and now I feel like I have an obligation that we need to do this. And so it's building anything is hard, it's scary, there's lots of uncertainty, but the principles that we talked about, and I think still are core to who we are speed. We're gonna operate and innovate quickly. With our customers, we're going to give them the best customer service they've ever had. Like we have a saying here at Float, not tomorrow, today, not next week, this week. The idea is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, customers are doing business. Like there's no work hours, there's no holidays. People, especially that are running small businesses, it's always on. The idea of, reach out to us between 9 to 5 or why don't you swing by the branch? We hated that. And so we said from the beginning, we're going to meet customers where they are, which is mostly online. We're going to provide them with the best customer service in the industry. We're going to respond to them in 1 minute or less. We're going to innovate and build products really quickly. And we're going to recruit a team that is deeply, deeply customer obsessed and is going to work backwards from ideal customer experiences and then build the business, as opposed to, let's create a risk team and let's create a compliance team and let's create a marketing team and then we'll figure out how to jumble it together and sell it to people. And I think that those principles are still very much central to what we're doing.
That customer obsession, it's sort of in the DNA of most of the founder CEOs that I've had an opportunity to interview. Yesterday we had Wayne Pommen, who founded PayBright. Yeah. He talked about speed. He talked about customer obsession. Again, a very disruptive force in Canadian financial services. So would you say that, your experiences prior to Float and, starting Uber was helpful in bringing that customer first mindset into your organization?
Yeah, immensely. And, it's easy to say those things. It's hard to do them in practice. And I think Uber, Uber changed my life, my perspective, because they were truly thought through the lens of not just what would be ideal for Uber in the next 3 months, but what's the best actual long-term thing we can do to build a business and to serve our customers that would really wow them. And as an example, just to put it in a perspective of how intense they were, and we take a similar approach, when I interviewed at Uber, every single person that interviewed to be in operations, in the business, in marketing, if you were a marketing manager, GM, every single person in their interview did a case where they did a case about some part of the business, but they also had to respond to 10 customer complaints through our support channel and on social. And you had to actually write the response. And so you're looking for deep customer empathy. You're looking for an ability to communicate in a way that resonates with customers in 2024, not long essays, but, we'll get you up and running. Sorry about that. This won't happen again. Or reach out to us if you have any issues, small things like that. And we did it in every language, and we did it from the beginning. And I think the idea of when I joined Uber, those first 3 months, they demanded that. And so I had to interact. I onboarded thousands of drivers. You develop a lot of empathy for drivers at Uber. And I think the same principle applies, which is it's easy to write it on the wall, mural. But if you recruit people who in interviews, in their behaviors, actually demonstrate, okay, this is the strategic question I've been asked. Are they talking about the customer lens? Are they talking about the customer interest? Are they actually thinking through the lens of what would be best for the customer? And I think that's the thing that I took away. It's not a business strategy. It's more of a philosophy and something you look for in the people you hire.
I want to go back to speed with precision. And that's something I talk about a lot, continuously looking to do things faster, but also trying to straddle that balance with a fair amount of precision. How do you think about that as you've grown Float into, the next level every single year?
It's the most important thing. I mean, people always ask me, it's a very common thing, I think as a founder, you get asked, like what's the company's competitive advantage? And folks want this really like Harvard business sort of case study response. And they're often surprised, especially early on at Float, where I'd said, we don't have a competitive advantage. Our competitive advantage is we work harder and we ship faster.
Amazing.
And people are like sort of shocked, and it's like, we're default dead. Like this is, we have to stay on top of innovation. And the reality is there's lots of research on this. Most of what you do the first time around, you're gonna get wrong. So if you spend 9 months trying to build a perfect product and then you launch it, if you launched it at 6 months or 3 months with an MVP, if you compare those two paths a year later, 2 years later, the velocity of feedback and improvement you're going to get if you launch faster is going to be a lot higher. And so your company trajectory can really change. And I think we've tried to adopt that mindset, and it's hard. It requires a very difficult judgment between the speed and quality. So, it's a good example. You want to be customer obsessed. Where does customer obsession collide with launching a product too quickly? And we make those mistakes. We've launched some products, really quickly. We've launched some that we took too long to do, and we continue to try to find the right balance. There's no perfect science.
I think every founder CEO is constantly grappling with the speed to market versus quality balance. Now, I want to talk to you about growth. I mean, you guys have consistently grown through the pandemic. How do you think about growth? Is this, one of your key, metrics that you're consistently tracking?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it has to be if you're building certainly a venture-backed company. And I think it's deeper. It's more than just, we want to grow. We talk at Float when we're living our mission, which is to simplify finance for Canadian companies. They use Float, they spend on Float. And so our payment volume is a good abstraction of that, which is a representation of that, which is if we're growing our payment volume quickly, it means we're acquiring new customers that really like our products, that are finding it serves their needs. And our existing customers are using Float more than they did maybe 3 months prior, 6 months prior, because we're helping them solve new problems. We're helping automate more of their transactions. We're offering them new things. Those two things multiplied by together, added together, ultimately amount to your growth. And so I think it's important. It's a good barometer for how you're doing as a company. And in the lens of speed, it's a good sign of how quickly you're pushing. The market's changed a lot over the last couple of years. So growth is not the only thing. We talk about profitable, efficient growth, or PEG. What does good growth look like versus bad growth? And what do those trade-offs mean? And that I think is really important to navigate.
That's incredible. And again, you guys have grown, but still maintain, and I could honestly say as a customer, I have a unique lens in that you deliver great service. Float is a fantastic solution for businesses. I talk about it a lot to my fellow co-founders who sit in that chair from Canada. So you've also managed to grow your capital. You've raised some financing. How did you do that? How did you get some pretty big names in the investment world to buy into Float? So talk to me about how that journey unfolded for your first round.
Yeah, so the history, Float, we raised our seed round in May of 2021. Golden Ventures and SUSE Ventures led it. And I've learned a lot about fundraising. I mean, I don't think I'm perfect at it. The truth is, having a finance background, having folks around the table on the leadership team that have done financings before, maybe working in banking or in consulting or in private equity, many of us have that background. It's helpful. But I think the truth is you got to have an exciting vision and you got to deliver results. And so I think that our seed round, we went to about 10 or 15 funds. The round came together pretty quickly. Seed rounds at that time were relatively easy to get done if you had a good idea and at least the foundation of a product and a starting team that had some credibility, and we were fortunate we had that. But I think beyond that, if you look to the Series A we did and our latest round, which we're announcing shortly, we I think it's not that I'm a talented fundraiser. I think that the team and the business have produced results and most importantly, innovation. And I think that's what investors want to invest in on a personal level, showing passion, showing integrity, showing that you're ethical, showing that you're aligned. I think is important. But the reality is if you don't have a great product, and you don't have a great team, and you're not innovating, no amount of meetings and coffees is probably going to raise you capital. And similarly, you can not have a lot of things, but if you have those things, I think people are going to be excited to invest in your business. And so I'm not sure that that's a great answer to the question, but that and hard work and meeting lots of people and being prepared.
And we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are founders who are thinking about going into the market in terms of raising capital. Any advice for them in terms of how to think about maybe Series A, seed round, et cetera?
Yeah. I think it actually starts with asking yourself the question, why am I raising capital? And who would make sense to provide that capital? There's a whole world of great businesses out there that are not necessarily venture-backed businesses. And I think people, entrepreneurs and founders, take it hard when VCs pass on their business. Lots of great businesses are not necessarily right for venture capital. Venture capital is costly. You're going to consume a lot of capital. You're going to really have to grow very, very aggressively. And so I think it starts with that question. Why do you want to raise capital? What are you going to do with the money? And who do you think is the right investor to come in? And ask yourself, what sort of a business do I want to build? If you want to build a venture-backed business, you're going to have really high growth targets. You're going to operate 24/7. It's certainly not going to be anything like a lifestyle business. Not that there's anything wrong with building a lifestyle business. I think it starts with that. I think once you decide you want to raise capital, my brain always starts with a spreadsheet. So make a list of all of the possible investors out there, and then go ask them and ask people in your network who are other great investors. I'm just, that's my mindset is I'm not going to go talk to 2 or 3 investors. I'm going to see the full universe of investors, go on their websites, look at the portfolio companies they have, and ask yourself, does this company, this investment firm have a unique perspective we can learn from beyond capital, right? Like, do they have expertise in our space? Do we have relationships with them? Have their founders or partners worked in our industry before? Why would they be excited? If you look at their websites, they might tell you, they almost always tell you what's the criteria. And a lot of people actually don't stop to think, there's lots of investors out there. They're made of different stripes. They have different investment criteria. So I think it starts doing that homework. Step 2 is put together a pitch deck. It's really important. Many people, one of the biggest mistakes founders make, and I learned at this lesson, there is no bigger turnoff to venture investors. Many founders do this. They get anxious, they get nervous, they don't want to go into pitch yet. So they'll set up a coffee and they'll be like, I'm thinking about raising. Disaster. Don't do it. It turns VCs off. It looks really weird and passive and low conviction. Spend the time, put together your fundraising deck, prepare by presenting to other founders, prepare by presenting to investors or people you trust that can tear it apart. It happened to me when we did our seed. It got torn apart a couple of times. And then I had the confidence, okay, this is a good pitch deck. I'm prepared. Now let's go to the investors. And I think what I found was pitching the investors you want to work with the least first and saving the best ones for last so that you're ready goes a really long way. And I think the last one is, and I don't like it, but it's simply a reality of the venture industry. There's a big element of FOMO. And so if you go to investors and say, we're thinking about raising capital over the next 6 months, we're going to meet with these investors and then next month, they're not going to feel any pressure. Investors see lots of opportunities. And so time constraints help. They also help you not spend 6 months fundraising. So I think prep up front, make your list of investors, meet them and pitch them all in a 2-week time period, go all the way down top to bottom, and then figure out who's interested in learning more. And you have to marshal them along because if you don't, and they don't feel like there's a round construct coming together, there's any sort of reason for them to dig in on a time-sensitive basis, you'll never get anywhere.
What a great rundown on the funding game.
It's important. It's important.
So a lot of our founder CEOs that I talk to, at some point in their journey, have had to deal with some seriously heavy resistance, some challenges that came out of nowhere that kind of gave them a gut punch, right? Yeah. Have you had any of those moments, whether it was a customer, a serious sense of, am I ever going to get through this?
All the time, including today and this week. I get punched in the stomach constantly. And I'm very open about it. Like building a business, I do it because I love it. I mean, we're passionate about what we do. It's fun. But just like training in the gym or playing sports, you're going to get hit, you're going to get knocked down, and you're going to have games or days where you're like, I suck. Yeah. And we have those. I mean, I remember early on, we launched our product, we got it out into market, and we got our first round of feedback. You know, we brought on, I think, our first 60 customers. And I don't know that it was like a crisis, but like we started to see the blemishes in our product. We launched it. It was really meant for very, very small businesses. And we started to move up market and sell to larger and larger businesses. And we were able to get the sale done. But what happened was 60 days later, then the blemishes showed up. Like, oh, well, I can't use this with 60 people. This is maybe for 5 people, 5-person company. Those hurt. And they're embarrassing, and they create fear and anxiety, and they make you question your decision making. And those things happen all the time. We have a channel at Float called NPS detractors. So every single time a customer, including you, submits an NPS score and submits feedback, the entire company sees it simultaneously in a Slack channel. Wow. And every time I look at it, it makes my heart beat hard. And but I think what I've learned through all this stuff is these things are going to happen. It's not the avoidance of them happening. It's actually how you show up the next day. How can we learn from this? What can we do about this? We had moments in time where we grew our team too quickly. In 2022, we grew our team quite a bit. 2023, the end of 2023, we found a couple of parts of our business that were just not working that well. And while we were growing and we had capital, we just said, we got to pull back here. And we restructured some of our teams. You know, I stood up in front of the company and said, you know, these are some areas that things are just not working. And we got to take a step back and nail these motions before we hire 10, 20 people to do them. And those moments suck. There's like, I still feel that, but that's where entrepreneurs live. You live in the suck. And the reality is, as an entrepreneur, and if you're building a business, you don't need to get everything right. You need to get your product right most times. You need to get the people right. And you need to get your values right. And then you just need to give a damn. And that means that on, I'll give you another example. We rolled out, Float was building so quickly, we didn't even have a billing system. So we actually told customers, this is what it costs to use Float. We had no way to collect it. So this is 2020, early 2022 maybe, or maybe it was, early 2022. We said, we're rolling out a billing system. And the team was like, yeah, we're going to charge. And I said, we're not charging customers? And it's like, no, just like they've agreed to pay this price. And I'm like, well, damn, this is bad. So we launched this new billing system. I remember the engineer that came onto the team to launch it. It went out and it was a total mess. It emailed a bunch of our customers the wrong numbers. It pissed them all off. You know, we got really sensitive about that. You know, trust with customers is important. And I remember that night, it was like Friday at 8 p.m. And it's like, this is a total mess. And 20 of us got in a call and it was like, we're all working through the weekend. That's it. We'll get through the bottom. We'll get to the bottom of it. Every single customer we're going to reach out to, we're going to explain what happened, we're going to apologize, we're going to make it right, and then we got to fix this billing system and we need to relaunch it. And that's one of those moments where you go, there's no hours, there's no days, there's no weekends. This is our reputation. And this is a moment that we have potentially, broken trust with some of our customers. And I think that's the kind of attitude you kind of always have to have, because those moments happen.
Rob, I could go on for hours. We are at a very important time in Canada's history, and you are a Canadian tech founder. Your company is, focused on solving some problems for Canadians. What is your take on what's going on in the environment right now? What are you hopeful? Are you optimistic? We've got U.S. president talking about tariffs for Canadians. So love your perspective.
Yeah. It's I think it's on everyone's mind. I don't know a single person right now not thinking about this. I think this is the most, Canada is a relatively calm group of people, Canadians, right? And it takes a lot to rile folks up. And I think folks are riled up. And, I think I'm optimistic. I think there's a lot of talent in Canada. I think people care. I see that now more than ever. I think the civic engagement right now is probably the highest it's ever been, even in the business community. I know lots of folks who are thinking, how can we help support these priorities for the government, whichever government it may be? How can we be a partner to them? How can we leverage our expertise and our resources and our experiences to help the country grow? I'm optimistic that people care and that they're working towards it. I think Canadians need to demand more. And I think that expectations in Canada are too low. Standards are way too low. People have become complacent with poor customer service. They've been complacent with poor service from banks. They've been complacent with poor service from the government. They've been complacent on too many things. And I look at that and say, let's raise the bar. Let's start demanding more from each other, from the people we work with, from the governments that we elect, because this is a great country. It has a rich history. I grew up very fond of Canada, and I still am. The multiculturalism of Canada, the support for innovation, the social welfare system, which provides a nice backdrop to capitalism that supports people who are in moments of need or struggle. I think those are great qualities. But I think the reality is we need to look our eyes in the mirror and say, being idealistic about what we want to stand for as a country is not good enough. You have to produce growth. It's the same thing as a business. You can wish your way at all sorts of things. If your company's not growing and you can't pay the bills, you can't employ people. You can't pay people. You can't grow. You can't invest. And so I think people should be angry. I'm angry, but we should be optimistic. And I think people need to do something about it. They need to speak up and say, this is what my company, my family, my community is doing about it, and start demanding change. Because the biggest risk Canada faces is just people not being willing to speak up, not being willing to demand change and say enough is enough. And I think as a business, you deal with that. The reality is, if we don't please our customers, the outside world doesn't care. No one's coming to save us. If our customers don't like our product, they don't like our service, they'll leave. And no one will be there to save our company. And I think that Canada needs to look at the business opportunities to grow the economy through the same lens, which is, if we want people to grow up here and be able to buy homes here, and for Canada to thrive, we have to create economic prosperity. And real wage growth relative to housing costs is a huge risk to the country right now.
Yeah, I think I fully align with your views. We have to grow out of this. I think it's a moment for us to maybe start playing offense with some nationalistic pride. So I like the rallying, if you will, certainly in the business community, and hopefully it keeps going and supports whatever government comes into power. As we wrap up the episode, I want to talk about the future. What's next for Float? I am so excited to see where you guys are going and kind of be along that ride as a customer. So talk to us about what we can expect from Float into the future.
Yeah, well, we're excited. We recently closed our Series B, so I'm excited to share that. We're partnering with Goldman Sachs, and we're really excited to have them as a great global investor that recognize the opportunity, in financial services and to serve Canadian businesses. So it's a contrary to what we discussed as capital inflow, and we're proud of that. For us, this is all about our product roadmap and product innovation, and the things that we're excited about are improving access to capital. It's a major issue for many businesses in Canada right now. The level of capital they can access and how quickly they can access it is a gap. Float today offers credit to many of our customers. We're excited to roll that out more broadly, new ways for customers to access spending power. How can I invest more in my business if I work with Float and I use a product like Float than maybe a different provider? Two is financial automation. And I think that the rise of ChatGPT, we've all seen in our personal lives and even our professional lives, the potential. We're saving our customers right now up to a day a month in terms of time to close the books. And we want to take that way further. And so what I'm excited about is eliminating manual interactions on Float. We're looking at how we can actually automate most of the manual touches in our product, especially for controllers, finance teams, and accountants who do month end and go through transactions. We're very, very excited to innovate there. And certainly to launch new products that reward our customers and generate ROI. And one of those products is in the space of treasury or yield. We know rates right now, while they're high, most small businesses don't get access to them. Inflation is really high. And so we're really excited to put these products in our hands where if you have $25,000 in the bank, it's your operating cash, or $100,000 or $100 million, how can we actually ensure that that capital is growing at the highest rate possible on Float? And lastly, our vision is to enable our businesses or our customers to pay any business globally instantly in any currency. So if you think about, if we can enable that, you can send payments to your invoice, to your suppliers, you can pay people and conduct business instantly in real time. Now you have a lot less dead money sitting in wire transfer delays, moving back and forth between countries. Now you can accrue interest and actually generate reward on that, which we think is really, really important to SMBs right now and Canadians everywhere. So those are some of the things, and hopefully some surprises along the way.
Rob Chasm, you are a true challenger. You're a true innovator. We are honored. I'm honored to call you my friend and
Thanks for having
also
me.
a business associate.
Thank you. Thanks for being a client and having me on.
Awesome.